Hi everybody, my name is George Siciliano, and today I'm going to show you how I make a miniature quilt. You've probably seen these little blocks that I make on the internet, and today I am going to show you exactly how to make those blocks. First, I want to go over what you need in order to do this. The first thing you're going to need, of course, is a sewing machine. And I want to talk about now the setup of the sewing machine. Opening it up, I use a thread called Soft Touch, YLI Soft Touch. Soft Touch is a thread, it's a 60 weight 2-ply cotton. I've been using it for the last 15 years and I've never had a thread break on me as a result of the thread's fault. It's usually something I did that was really stupid. Coming on down, I use the 70/10 needle or a 75/11. For the micro minis, those real small ones, I use a 60/8. But we're not going to be making a micro mini today. We'll make some minis. And then the foot I use, it's an open toe foot. You have to see where that needle comes down and actually pierces the paper of the foundation. So I have an open toe foot, I have a needle, and now my stitch length. For the size quilts that we're going to be doing today, I'm going to be doing a 2mm stitch length. For smaller quilts, I use a 1.4mm. The technique for making the smaller ones and the larger blocks are exactly alike. The pattern we're going to make today is this one. It's called Glow in the Dark, and it's a pattern that I make, and it's part of my class. The name of my class is Size Really Does Matter. And let me show you what you get in the pattern. Of course, on the top of the pattern, you have the picture of the finished product. Inside, this is a worksheet. I always make a worksheet, and you'll notice the red lines on the worksheet. If you cut that out with a scissors, and you can twist and turn the blocks and make your own pattern. You don't have to make that pattern. This is a glow-in-the-dark visual block. This is just to show you what piece you're up to next. You'll notice all the lines are numbered, and I'm going to show you how that comes into play. The last thing that's going to be in there that you'll notice is the numbered schematic. This is the block right here I'm going to be making today. You'll notice it's all numbered. There's a cutting chart on the side, which is all numbered, and there's a fabric gradation chart on the bottom, which coincides with the cutting chart, and it tells you exactly what color you're going to be using for that particular patch. And then, of course, there are the foundations. You'll have enough foundations in your kit to finish the project that's on the front. And I have one foundation already cut out, and we're almost ready to sew. And what I want to do is tell you exactly what you're going to need in order to complete this. I always keep the schematic and the cutting chart close at hand, and I go down patch by patch, and it tells me the size I need them. They're all these are 1 inch by something, so I cut 1 inch strips, which I've done right here, and I've laid out the strips. And now I'm going to go over to the number. For instance, number 3 is a 1 by 1 1/4 of the B color. The B color in this case is that one right there. I match it, cut the piece to that size, and I put it on the top of my machine here. And the one I have completely done is this right here. This is the entire block, and I put all the patches right up here. I need a roller in order to roll the seam after I sew it. I do not use an iron. I use this roller. I need nippers to cut threads. I need a seam ripper for, well, we all know why I need a seam ripper. And I need a rotary cutter. And you know what's nice? If you had a nice sharp blade in there. And the piece de resistance is my seam allowance guide. This is a guide that I invented for foundation and paper piecing. When I invented this, I made it for a left-handed quilter. So if you were left-handed, you would put the plug on the left-hand side so the ruler opens up this way. If you're a right-hander, you put it on the left-hand side and it opens up this way. If you want to do an 1/8 inch seam allowance, you set it to the 1/8 inch, or you turn it around and it's a 1/4 inch. So we have a 1/4 inch seam allowance guide, an 1/8 inch seam allowance guide for a right-handed quilter or a left-handed quilter. Today I'm going to be using the 1/8 inch seam allowance, and I'm a right-hander, so I'm going to put the plug on the left-hand side. And it's a pop-in plug. Just put it through and push down, and it's in. And I put this right here on my table. Now you'll notice I have modified my table where I put the cutting mat right on top of the table. I do this because everything I do is right here. I'm making small quilts. This is my foundation. I've cut it out and I'm ready to go with the foundation. You'll probably notice there are numbers on the foundation. Folks, if you can count to 36 without missing a beat, and if you can sew on that line, you can make that quilt, the patch that's right down here. So let me get started. The first thing you're going to do, you always sew on the side that's been printed. And it says right on here, it says sew side. You pick up the first 2 patches and line them up on one of the lines. And I go to line number 1 and I set it up so it's not encroaching on line number 8, which is above it. There. So now I have it set. I put it underneath the foot, and I have my machine set at 2mm stitch. I'm going to have it locked down and automatically cut, and I'm ready to go. Because I'm diabetic, I do not use the foot, the power foot. I use the stop-go button on the face of the machine. This machine, by the way, is a Brother machine. I believe Brother to be one of the finest machines on the market today. And I'm going to start. There's my seam allowance right there. And now I take my nippers and I cut these threads away, because trust me folks, if you don't cut these little pieces of thread away, they will come back and they will haunt you. And then I finger press out to the stitches, just like that. And then I take my ruler, or my roller, and I roll the seam down. I don't iron it, I use the roller. Now I am finished with the first patch. And now I'm going to do patch number 2. I turn the seam allowance. Oh, by the way, the instructions are right here on the back of the ruler. So it says, for the first part, it said place the foundation on your cutting mat, sew side up, rotate the cutting guide to the open position. Well, that's the open position. And then it says to place the cutting guide edge along the next patch I'm going to be sewing. The next patch I'm going to be sewing is number 2, which is right there. Then I have to fold the foundation back to me, and then I take the cutting guide and I bring it down, holding it by the notches on the end here, because you see it stops right on the 1/8 inch. And then I cut my seam allowance. Note, I've just cut the seam allowance for the next patch I'm going to sew, not the first patch, the first 2. So now that line tells me exactly where to put the next patch. So I take the next patch and I put it right along this line that I just created, and I turn it over and I sew the next patch. Again, I'm trying to erase the line with the thread. I want to get it as close to the middle of that line as possible. There's my seam allowance. And now I just fold this up, just like that, and rotate the rotor here, the roller. Now I'm ready for the next patch. Nothing I'm doing here is very difficult, is it? Open the ruler, put it along number 3. I pick up, cut the seam allowance, I pick up my next patch here for number 3, and I put it right along the line I just created. Remember the old days, folks? Every time you did this, you had to go like this to try to figure out where to put that patch? Well, you don't have to do that. It's right there. Most of the times when you put the patch in that position, it's usually wrong. Waste time and you waste fabric. Okay. This seam allowance guide of mine is good for just about any size block you make. I do the micro minis with it. I make 10-inch blocks with it. And finger press it up. Roll it. Turn it over to patch number 4. And now I just put the guide along number 4. I pull the foundation back towards me. Good if I put it along number 4. There we go. And then pull this down to the 1/8 inch position. Cut off the seam allowance. Take the next patch to be sewn. Put it right along that line. Nothing changes. I want to make sure I have it completely covering the line. I have to just move this over just a little bit. There we go. And I sew along line number 4. When I'm making the real small quilts, like this one right here, it's the same process, only I'm using a thinner needle, I'm using a silk thread, and I'm using very tiny stitches. I use a 1.4 millimeter stitch, but the process is the same. So, nip off the threads. Finger press it up, get the roller and roll it down. Now I've finished the first round of logs on this log cabin, and now I'm going to add the extra pieces. The first piece I'm going to add is this piece right here, which is one of the points. And the same thing happens. It doesn't make a difference what the angle is. Just put the guide right along the line, bring the top down, and now it's showing me exactly where to put the patch. I take the next patch, which is this one right here, and I put it along that line, just like that. And I sew right along the line. You know how hard it is to get points to match up. Well, watch this. When I fold this back and cut this, Look at the point. The point is exactly where it should be. It has not been cut off. And then I'm going to do line number 6. Again, it's a very funky angle, and this is the reason why I designed this particular block for classes, because we do all kinds of angles. Fold the foundation back, flip the guide down, cut the seam allowance, take the next patch, this one right here, put it along that line, and there. That's one of them. And this is the last piece of the first round. You'll notice on the worksheet that we have the entire block broken down into rounds. And everywhere you see a line, that's a round. So just so that you know that. I don't go far from my tools, they're right here. And I don't go far from my patches, they're right here. Lots of folks take their patches when they cut them and they put them down here somewhere, and they always get mixed up with the junk that you don't really need or want, and then you end up losing a patch or getting it out of sequence. I know we're doing a video now, and I know you're looking at this, but I wish you were in the room here so that you could ask me questions. This is what the first round looks like after it's been sewn. And now I'm going to be doing the last round. Follow the overlap. There we go. 29. Follow the numbers. That's the best way to do it. You notice I don't pin anything. I don't pin the patches before I sew them. I just hold it real tight and I bring it over to to the sewing machine. A lot of people ask me about this piece of plastic here I have right here, and that's just a segue to go between my cutting pad and into the feed dogs. I used to iron. Every time I sewed a patch on, I used to iron it. And you know, I'm a guy, and because I'm a guy, I've got a piece of equipment and it has an on-off switch. Of course, in the iron, it has a rotary switch that goes around, and there's medium and low, and there's cotton and there's silk. But as far as I'm concerned, it was either on or it was off. And I would put it on all the way, and that sole plate on that iron sometimes would get orange, so hot. And I burned up a few quilts, burned up a few patterns. So I stopped ironing because I really didn't know how to use it. So I used the roller instead. But you know what? I found that the roller, as opposed to ironing, gives a softer finish to the whole quilt. So I kind of discovered that by accident. There's a lot of things we discover by accident, aren't there? Okay, just there's 2 patches here, and then the last 2 patches at the end, and then this block is done. And I just know that if you've been watching this video up to this point, you know and I know that you can do this. And I would love to see you do it. I'd love to see you take a picture of your finished block and email it to me. I noticed that I didn't cut one of the patches right here, so I got to get a piece of the fabric, a 1-inch piece, and just cut a piece. And you know, it's really important when you do these that you measure them really accurately, just like that. That's accurate enough. That's the nice thing about foundation piecing too. You're not making templates. You're just cutting out a chunk of fabric, and you're going to put it on the sew it in, and then you're going to cut away what you don't need. that old joke that we used to hear as kids. How do you sculpt an elephant out of ice? You just cut away everything from a cube of ice that doesn't look like the elephant. And that's exactly what I'm doing here. I'm cutting away everything that doesn't look like the block. And I have some guidance. Okay, now I've got two more pieces to do. One of them is the accent line, and the other is the bottom piece. Now, fold this back here. Okay, now the accent line is going to come right across here. So I look on this side, I open up the guide, there's nothing different. Just put it right along the line, pull this forward, and I want to cut off all this excess stuff right here. Don't need it. Okay. Now I'm going to take the patch and put it right along that line, just like that. And this is really important on this patch that you stay right on the line. I'm going to slow the machine down a little bit because if it's off a little bit, boy, is it going to show in the front. So we don't want that to happen. I'll go a little faster. There we go. I'm watching that needle come down, and I'm watching it come down right in the middle of that line. Because if this line is crooked, and the next line I do is crooked, the line that you see on the front is going to look terrible. And after all this work, here we go. And just, again, finger press that. This is important too, to get it right up that line, the stitches. Okay, and now, this is cutting the seam allowance now for the last patch. I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it right along that line, just like that. Straighten that out. And that's the block. It's complete. Now all I have to do is trim it. And what I do is I trim it to a quarter inch beyond the outside line. So we're going to do that right now. It's 4 cuts. Okay, this goes in the trash, and that is the completed block right there.